Now that you've gone through the slide deck, you're able to go through this handout and fill in some of the blanks. Use this as a way to assess your learning after the slide deck. If there's something you're not sure of, go back to the slide deck to review the concepts. So the big idea from this lesson is that the reason that we grow is not because you get bigger cells, but because you get more cells. So one cell will become two cells, and then those cells will become more cells, and that cycle basically continues over and over and over again until eventually we become you, which is trillions of cells, this multicellular organism. So we all started off being made with sperm and egg. So we have sperm with 23 chromosomes, that's a haploid number. Egg with 23 chromosomes, that's a haploid number as well. They came together to make the zygote, which has 46 chromosomes. That's the diploid number. So we start off as one diploid zygote, one diploid cell, which is unicellular, and it eventually become trillions of cells. We become multicellular. And that happens through the idea of cell division. So cell division is explained through what's called the cell cycle. And the cell cycle is just a series of events in a cell's life that happens over and over and over again. And there's two main parts to the cell cycle. There's something called interphase and then something called division. The cell cycle can be seen in this chart over here. The first part of the cell cycle is the growth stage or interphase. That's where a cell actually just prepares to divide. It grows by doubling DNA and doubling organelles, and it spends 90% of its life in that phase. Once it's fully prepared to divide, so once it's doubled everything and prepared, did everything on its checklist, and it's sure that there won't be any mistakes, it can go into the division stage next. And division stage is only 10%, so 90% for growth and division, and then for growth and preparation to divide, and then 10% for the actual division itself. So the growth stage, what's happening there is it's basically just a cell starting preparing to divide, and to do that, it doubles DNA and organelles, because the idea is that the cell, when it divides, doesn't want to chop itself in half. If it didn't double stuff, so for example, let's say you have 46 chromosomes, every time your cell divided, each cell would have 23, and then half of that and half of that and half of that every time. You'd lose half every single time. So what happens instead is we double first and then divide, so each new cell that's made has the same as the original. The original cell is called the parent cell. That's the original. And then the new cells that are made eventually are called daughter cells. So the parent cell will grow, prepare to grow, so double DNA, double organelles. Then when it's ready to divide, it'll enter the division stage, which is 10% of the cell's life. Division actually consists of two parts. There's mitosis and cytokinesis. We're going to see those two parts later on. But the idea with division stage is that the one cell divides into two cells. And those two cells are called daughter cells. So what is mitosis? Well, mitosis is separation of the DNA being separated equally to both sides. And cytokinesis is, we call it division of the cytoplasm. It's when the cell actually splits into two new cells. And again, those two new cells are called daughter cells. And those two daughter cells are identical to each other. So they have the same DNA as each other, but they're also identical to the original parent cell they were once before. So they have the same number of DNA and organelles, for example. So genetically identical. Now, let's go take a look at an example of that cell cycle. So here we have the original cell has one DNA. It goes through interphase, so it doubles the DNA and organelles. You don't see the organelles, you just see the DNA right now, but now it has two DNA. So that's interphase. That's 90% of the cell's life. Now, the next part is division. So these two components here are division. This first part of division is separating DNA equally to both sides. So you get one DNA that way, one DNA that way. And then the second part of division is cytokinesis, where you actually split the cells into two new cells. So this is a cell with one DNA. This is a cell with one DNA as well. They're identical to each other and identical to the original that they started off as. So that's mitosis, division of the nucleus or DNA, and then cytokinesis, division of the cytoplasm, or separating the cell into two. If you want to see more details of each step that I just explained, you can watch this quick video lesson here. This is something you should watch in order to prepare yourself for the lesson going forward, which will be on the details of mitosis, cytokinesis, and interphase. But another example using a different number. So suppose your parent cell had 10 DNA. During interphase, what would happen is, so you have 10 DNA. During interphase, the cell would grow and have 20 DNA. It doubled its DNA. Then, during mitosis, 10 DNA would go to one side, and another 10 DNA would go to the other side. And then during cytokinesis, that cell would physically split, so each cell had 10 and 10 again. So they had the same as the original parent. That original parent became these two. But in order not to lose DNA, you have to double first. Then when you divide, you're back to 10. And like I said, in the next lesson, we're going to go over the details of interphase. We're going to zoom in and see what's happening within the cell. And we'll go over the details of mitosis and cytokinesis. We'll zoom in and see what's happening within the cell. So what's the whole point of this cell division stuff? Why do we care about it? Well, as you can probably tell, growth is one important aspect of it, right? You have sperm and egg. They make the zygote, one single cell. That zygote becomes trillions of cells. You grow. A seed starts off as a seed and eventually becomes a larger plant. Growth. That's one important aspect of why cells need to divide. But there's other important reasons for that. Repair is one. That's a pretty straightforward one. It's basically just regeneration. So if you damage your tissues or parts of your body, you can heal that damage. So if you cut yourself, for example, or break a bone, then the cells will undergo cell division. We'll do cell division to heal the cut and to heal the bone. Some organisms can actually regrow entire body parts. So here we have the arms of a salamander. And the salamander can actually regenerate an entire limb because its cells are simple enough to kind of go through division and remake that limb. We are not that good at regenerating, at repair. We can heal a broken bone. We can heal some cuts, for example, but not an entire limb because our cells are just a bit too complex to kind of regenerate entirely. But we can still repair stuff, and we still rely on cell division to help repair parts of our body. So here we can see growth. Here we saw repair. And then another reason for cell division is maintenance. So sometimes our cells just get worn out or they die. They've been around a long time. They have some damage and they don't work as well as they used to. So what happens is those worn out cells, we just basically get rid of them and we have to replace them so our body can still function. And so we can do that by cell division. So these here in humans, these are red blood cells. As you know, these are ones that carry oxygen. These live for about 120 days, and eventually they kind of they die because they get worn out. So we have to replace them, and so we can do that by cell division. So we're able to maintain the organism by doing that. Snakes, they shed their skin. When their skin cells get really old, they shed their entire skin, and then they make new skin. And we do as well. We just don't crawl out of our skin like a snake does, but we lose skin cells daily. And we have to produce new skin cells to maintain our organism. So growth, maintenance, and repair are the main reasons why cell division is so important. So once you've gone through this slide deck and through this handout, you're able to try the learning goals. Again, these are the main takeaways that you should have understood during your learning. So all the answers can be found in the slide deck and in the handout. Some of them will require you to think a little bit. I encourage you to discuss some answers with your peers to make sure you understand it. And whatever you don't get, please make sure you go back to the slide deck or rewatch the video and see your teacher for additional support if you need it. This learning goal sheet here has an extra challenge for you to try out to see if you can guess somebody's age based on the number of times that they've shed their skin. So there's a little formula here you can read and then try to apply it to see if you can do that challenge.